Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahalo, moni muli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so very happy that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Himalaya, Ghana, Podcast Addict, wherever you find your podcast. Our guest today is Tamara Girardi. She is here to celebrate her brand new board book. It's called Why, Daddy? Why? Before we invite Tamara into the studio, we want to let you know that this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast is brought to you by DareToDreamBook.com. Hey, I have a question for you. Have you always wanted to be an author? Have you ever dreamt that it would be really cool to be an author? Do you know that your voice and your message matter? They do. Do you have an inspirational story of how you found the courage to reconnect with a long-lost goal or a dream? Well, if you've answered yes to any of those questions, we really want to encourage you to visit DareToDreamBook.com. Our friend G. Brian Benson and other authors have created this unique collaborative multi-author book project, and they want to help you fulfill your dream of becoming an author and getting your message out to the world. Check it out today, DareToDreamBook.com. Please be sure to let them know that you heard about them here on the Reading with Your Kids podcast. And speaking of connecting, we would love for you to connect with us on social media. Facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Reading With Your Kids on Instagram, at Reading With Your Kids on TikTok, at Jedley Magic on Twitter. And we would also love it if you could visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. You can click on the Parents Click Here button to read our blog, find out our latest Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read. You can also use the contact button at the top of the page to send us a message. Let us know what we're doing well. Let us know what we could be doing better. And let us know who you would like to hear on a future episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Joining us right now from Pittsburgh in the great state of Pennsylvania. Our guest today is here to celebrate a wonderful board book. It's called Why, Daddy? Why? Please welcome to the show, Tamara Girardi. Tamara, how are you?
Good. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
I'm delighted that you are here. You are. The book is published by our friends over at Familius. We love Familius here on the podcast. Tell us about Why, Daddy? Why, please?
Well, Why, Daddy? Why is a board book. It was just named an editor's choice from Amazon for books for babies, so that was pretty exciting. It is about all of those questions that kids like to ask. So you definitely know you're a parent when it feels like you hear the word why a million times a day. And that was the inspiration for the story. But the questions in the book are fun questions from the perspective of a child. And the responses are all about how much love the daddy has for the child. In this case, the characters are bears, so it would be the daddy bear and his little cub.
Awesome. It's been an awful long time, but I do remember those days when, you know, one answer would lead to another why, and then another why, and then another why. How can we resist the urge that many of us have when we're on the 10th why of saying, because it is, so stop and leave me alone?
That's such a good question. So when I remember I was driving in my car, actually, and I have a 3-year-old now, and he was asking questions about why we learn certain things and, you know, why do we have to learn about letters? And it was this trail of questions that got to the point that I said, you know, it's all about the neuroplasticity of the brain and how the brain can change and grow. And then he said, why again? And at that point I said, okay, I don't know. That's the extent of my knowledge on the subject. But I think it's really interesting because, we do tend to lose our patience. We are, as parents, we're mediators of this curiosity that children have. But it can be easy to lose our patience in the never ending stream of questions because we're so busy. And, teachers also are mediators of this knowledge, but they're also very busy. So, I think it's important to realize that this is an opportunity for, us to, fuel the child's imagination. And, learning is most pronounced when they're asking these questions. And when we get to the point that we don't have the answer to the question, that's a great opportunity to talk about research and how we learn about things. And fortunately, parents now have the internet, and we can very easily go to our favorite search engines and type the question into the search engine and teach our children how to do that, and then talk about the answers. And I think that's definitely one way to respond to it. But it was difficult that day whenever I was driving, because sometimes it's not always easy to just hop on the computer and go to Google.
Yeah. That's one of the things that I suggest to parents is to get off that pedestal that our kids put us on as quickly as possible. They look at us and then think that we have all of the answers and that we know everything. And in their eyes, we do. But that's an awfully hard pedestal to stay on. And I think the quicker we can get off that, the better. And a great way to do that is to say to our kids when they're asking why for the fifth or sixth time is, I don't know.
Right.
Why do you think?
Exactly.
Let's see if we can
and
find out.
that demonstrates a growth mindset too, which is so important and something obviously we're discussing a lot in education. Children think that they're just going to get to some point in life and they're going to know everything they need to know. So I think it is important, like you said, to demonstrate, well, sometimes I don't know these things either. And it's an opportunity for us to learn together, which is, I think, really sweet.
Yeah. Those opportunities to learn together, they're really gifts. And I think it's important for us to be aware of them and to take advantage of them when they arise, because there's never any warning that one's around the corner.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I agree.
So was there something specific that, I know you talked about your daughter in the car and everything, but was there something specific that inspired you to create Why Daddy Why?
Yes, absolutely. So this is actually really exciting. The book released on May 10th, and I had the opportunity to go into my daughter's first grade classroom and have a launch party, which was really fun. We had a book birthday party, and I have 4 children, but I went into my daughter Gabriella's first grade classroom because she was the inspiration for the book when she was 4. And age 4 is the age out of all of the ages that we could possibly be that asks the most questions. Research has proven 4-year-olds ask more questions than anyone else. So when Gabriella was 4, she asked a lot of questions, but she always used the word why at the beginning of the question and why at the end of the question. So it was kind of like, as many questions as you hear as a parent of 3 children. For her to be asking why twice in every question, it was definitely overwhelming. But we thought that it was cute, the way that she structured her questions. Why do I have to wear this today, Mommy? Why? Why do we have to eat this for dinner, Mommy? Why? So that's where we came up with the idea for the story. So we brainstormed, we listened to her talk for a little bit. We wrote down some of her questions. And even though sometimes, like we talk about, you can lose your patience as a parent, all of the responses in the story come back to the daddy's love for the cub. And it demonstrates to us how we can be patient. And I thought that was kind of a beautiful celebration of parenthood and a reminder with how busy our lives are. I feel like this book and that relationship and that dialogue between the cub and the daddy can kind of inspire that a little bit for us.
One of the things that I've been learning over the course of producing this podcast is, we always think of children's books as a wonderful tool to help our kids learn something, and we can use this to help our kids learn this or that. But I'm realizing that really wonderful picture books also teach us something as parents.
I love that. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it's interesting. So when I was preparing for the podcast, I was just reading a lot about questions, and I found this really beautiful quote from Rachel Carson, which is wonderful because Rachel Carson actually grew up about 15 minutes away from where I'm standing right now. So in Pittsburgh, we love to celebrate Rachel Carson and all of her research. But she wrote in her 1956 classic called The Sense of Wonder that a child's world is fresh and new and beautiful, fully of wonder and excitement. It is our misfortune that for most of us, that clear-eyed vision, that true instinct for what is beautiful and awe-inspiring, is dimmed and even lost before we reach adulthood. And so I think that these questions can kind of inspire some intrigue and curiosity and wonder in parents as well. For instance, one of the simple questions in the story is, why do you wear a watch? And I think it's interesting. My husband has recently stopped wearing his watch because he was feeling like everything he was doing, he was being interrupted by his smartwatch. So he took the opportunity to take his watch off. And maybe it's okay for us to even ask ourselves, why do we wear a watch? Why do we take our phones everywhere? Why do we do these things? So it's time, I think, for us to start thinking about that a little bit more as grown-ups too.
Yeah. What a great insight. There are so many things that we do as adults that we do just because we've been doing them.
Right.
And we're almost slaves to some of these habits and devices. And I think our kids are looking at us and thinking, why is that phone always glued to your ear? Why is that? Might be a good reminder for us to, maybe we can take a little bit more control. We can be more mindful and purposeful in the way we live our lives.
I agree. And I love about the illustrations too. There's so much nature included in the illustrations of the book. I think it's just a wonderful reminder that we need to get outside and experience that much more than we probably do. So I think that the illustrations are beautiful. I'm so grateful to the illustrator and to Familius for selecting her. She lives in London, England. So I don't know that she and I will ever have the opportunity to meet, but her illustrations are just lovely, and they absolutely inspire that sense of wonder, both for kids and adults.
Well, let's give her a shout out.
Yes. So her name is Nicola Calderi. And she's a wonderful illustrator, and she has a wonderful Instagram. So if you're on Instagram, I would definitely look her up because her artistry is just beautiful, and she posts some really, really amazing images.
Awesome. Yeah, we love giving credit where it's due, and creating beautiful illustrations. It definitely deserves a shout out. What's next for you? What kind of books are you working on now?
That's a great question. When I was in the elementary classroom the other day, a kindergarten said, "Is there going to be a sequel?" And it was just so cute. I would love for there to be a sequel. Let's celebrate mommies and aunts and uncles and grandpas and nanas and, sisters and brothers and all of the questions that we can be asking. But immediately, this is actually a really busy year for me. I have 5 books releasing this year. And this is the only children's book, but I have 4 young adult novels releasing this year.
Wow.
So yes, I'm very, very busy with that. And I'm looking forward to kind of reconnecting with children's book writing. But this was a wonderful contract from Wise Wolf Books to write 6 books. 4 of them are in a sports series. The first one released in March called Gridiron Girl. And it's about a girl who competes against her boyfriend to be the starting quarterback of their high school football team. And then there are 3 more books in the series. One releases at the end of May called Disorder on the Court. It's a volleyball story. The 3rd book, Ultimate Takedown, is a wrestling story. And the 4th book, Shot Through the Heart, is an archery story. So in all of the books, the female protagonists are from the same high school. They're friends. So you kind of get to see your favorite characters interacting a little bit more in the follow-ups, and see where their stories are going. And those all released this year. So I'm really busy with that. And then I have a second series coming with Wise Wolf Books in 2023.
Wow. You are really busy.
Yes, I am. But I'm enjoying it. I mean, this is for a writer. That's what you want. You want the opportunity to bring your stories to readers. And it's been so amazing to do that. And I'm grateful to you for the opportunity to share with your audience today. But after being, a writer that has heard a lot of rejection, and I'm sure will continue hearing rejection in the future, it's pretty wonderful to be just getting in touch with readers this year.
Yeah. Did you always dream of being a children's author?
I did. Well, I always dreamed of being an author. And then I was in my graduate program. I did a master's in fiction at the University of St. Andrews in Scotland. And the advisor that I had there told me that I had a young adult voice in my writing. And at that point, that's when I kind of immersed myself in reading YA and learning a lot about it. And I do think that the stories that tend to come to me are YA stories. So I wrote YA for quite a few years before I started writing children's books. And then after I had my fourth child, I actually was unfortunately unwell after that delivery. And I kind of pulled away from writing novels and instead just kind of connected with my kids and got on the floor and played with them and talked about stories and listened to what they were saying and wrote stories for them to give me feedback on. And it was kind of a more collaborative experience with my kids. That was a lot of fun that I really enjoyed. And I'm hopeful that we'll continue doing that because there are a lot of children's books on my computer's hard drive. So it's just a matter of getting them out there.
Awesome. You mentioned that there was a study that showed that 4-year-olds asked the most questions. As you said that, I was just horrified because I thought, what would it be like if I was doing that research and I had to count all the questions of 4-year-olds?
Listen to all the questions. Yeah, I think for this study, I found it really fascinating too. I was trying to find more information about the study, to be honest, and I haven't been successful in that yet. But for the study, they asked parents to report the number of questions their children asked every day. So I thought that was interesting. In addition to hearing the questions and responding to the questions, you actually have to keep track of the number of questions. But that was the methodology for that study I found really fascinating.
I think at the end of every day, I'd be writing too many.
I agree. And, what else I read about with my research on questions I think was really interesting is just maybe another way for parents to look at it when they're losing their patience is that questions are really the opportunity for us to sustain our species, which is something that people may not think about. But when you think about the cycle of life, you have older humans that have gained a lot of wisdom and a lot of expertise, and then they're passing away. And then you have new babies that don't have any of that information, and they need to take it all in so that they can sustain and even progress knowledge. So I think that it's fascinating that, at 4, they're able to start articulating all of those things that are in their heads. And we get this glimpse of everything that they're wondering, all of that curiosity. So when I started thinking about it that way, I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. I always imagined when my kids were very young, trying to imagine what the world looked like through their eyes.
Mm.
I think that's a fun thing for us as parents to do, just kind of imagine. And not only so much to figure out, what is it that they're thinking, but just to kind of reconnect with that joy that they're experiencing, because they're learning so many new things, and they're getting excited and really joyful as they learn all these new things. And wouldn't that be wonderful for us to just be learning the same amount of things as an adult that our kids are learning every day?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And I think that too, and I think that we talked about this once before, long before we got on for the podcast. But, I find it interesting as a college professor that some of my students who are adults, some have just graduated high school and some are returning students. I think it's interesting that they either are afraid to ask questions or perhaps not very skilled at formulating quality questions. So when I was writing this book, I was seeing my 4-year-old who was asking so many questions, nonstop questions with no restraint whatsoever. And then I have adult students that will email me something that isn't really a question, and I'm not even sure how to help them because I don't understand what it is that they're trying to get at. And I started thinking about, from a researcher background, how did we get from A to B on that? And, I think sociologically we're socialized to not ask questions as you get to a certain age. Mm-hmm. It comes from some of the things that we're talking about where parents say, okay, enough questions. Mm-hmm. And teachers say, okay, no more questions. You've already asked enough questions. And I think there are really practical reasons for that to occur. So there's no judgment on that. But then, as children get older, they'll have friends that might discourage engagement in the classroom. And, you're too interested in the material. You're always raising your hand. Here she comes with another question. And so over time, we're just kind of discouraged from that curiosity and that inquisitiveness, which I think is a huge detriment. Like we said before, talking about how, this is an opportunity to progress knowledge and sustain the species. That's an issue. So, I don't know if studies have been done about that progression. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if I have the capacity to do one of those studies myself, but that is my hypothesis. So I think that I would love to know more about how we're socialized away from questioning mm-hmm. as we grow.
I think you're absolutely right. Have you noticed that kids are less apt to ask questions now as opposed to maybe when you started teaching in college?
I'm not really sure. I don't know that I've noticed a huge change over time. I think that, and right now what we're seeing in education is all of the impact from COVID. So it's hard to look past that. It seems like such a huge speed bump. So anything we're seeing now almost is attributed to that. But I do think that there are some definite concerns about how questions are being asked. A lot of times, students will say, and I'm talking about college age students, they'll just email something like, I don't understand the assignment. And so it's difficult as a professor, well, what don't you understand? Mm-hmm. What specific questions do you have? Can you use critical thinking skills to formulate what you need into a question so that I can answer it? And, so I think that's absolutely something that perhaps, and I hear my other faculty colleagues talking about that as well. It's not only my experience for sure, and it's definitely anecdotal. So mm-hmm. I would like to see some more research on that.
Boy, I don't know how I would react from it if I was a college student and a professor wrote back to me, use your critical thinking skills and ask me a real question.
Usually I would respond something like, I'm really happy to help you with this, but I'm not exactly sure what I can do. Can you give me, point me in the right direction? What is it that you need assistance with? So, but I think that there's, it's not very efficient. Mm-hmm. It's obviously much more efficient to ask a detailed question. And that's not necessarily what the kiddos do. They have this curiosity when they're 4 years old that just cannot be satiated. And, I find sometimes when I'm answering a question, I'm trying to figure out how to answer this in a way that is simplified enough for my 4-year-old to understand. And by the time I even get the answer out, they don't even seem interested in the answer anymore, and they're on to the next question. So I think for them, it's just the experience of releasing all of the questions that they have in their mind.
Yeah. We definitely want to encourage kids to ask questions. We've talked here on the show. I remember driving my van, and then my son and his buddies were in the back seat, and they were all putting this great effort out to kind of show that they knew what was going on. And at one point, I just, after listening to it for about 20 minutes, I goes, hey, will you guys stop? Because none of you know anything. So just kind of relax. You're all in the same boat. And just let's ask some questions so you can find mm-hmm. out.
And I think my husband's always telling my kids that, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you can listen more than you talk. So I think, that's definitely an opportunity to be listening and learning.
Yeah. Hey, Tamara, where can people go to find out more about you, to find out more about Why Daddy Why, and the other great books that are coming out from you?
Well, my website is pretty simple. It's just tamaragirardi.com. So, and all my social media links are on there. I'm on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. And I have a newsletter that everyone can subscribe to get freebies like coloring pages and things like that for the book. And then the book is available. Some Barnes and Nobles are carrying it in the stores, and it's available online through Barnes and Noble, Amazon. I do have a local independent bookstore that is wonderful and I love to support. And that's Mystery Lovers Bookshop in Oakmont, Pennsylvania. And they have on their website, readers can order books that are signed copies from their website as well.
Awesome. We've had a great time talking about the new board book from our friends at Familius, Why, Daddy, Why? The new book from our guest, Tamara Girardi. Hey, Tamara, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our good friend, John Para, returns to the show to celebrate the first book that he has authored. He's illustrated loads and loads of books. He is a magnificent illustrator. This is the first book that he has written and illustrated. It's called Growing an Artist. It is an autobiographical picture book. Discover how John came to see himself as an artist. It's a beautiful story. You don't want to miss it. That's the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Speaking of growing an artist, if you're an author, you're an artist, and you had to grow to become an artist. And now that you are a published author, the growth is just beginning. Yeah, it's really neat. You're going to grow. You're going to become a better author. You're going to find out how to tell stories in different ways, how to write in different genres. Maybe you wrote a picture book and you're going to try your hand at a middle grade novel or vice versa. You're also going to grow as a marketer, because one of the things you might not have realized when you wrote your children's book, you were actually becoming the CEO of your children's book business. And that might be very daunting to you. Well, you don't need to worry about working by yourself. We would love to help you celebrate your book to the entire world. There's so many ways that we can help you celebrate your book. You can be guest here on the podcast. You can submit your book to our Certified Great Read panel. And you can also take part in our monthly promotion program. Have your book celebrated on the podcast through commercials, through messages to our 94,000 plus social media followers. Have your book displayed on our nationwide network of digital pedestrian billboards. And also display your book at whatever live event we may be a part of in a particular month. For example, in July of 2022, we are going to be down in Nashville, Tennessee at the Association of Teacher Educators Convention. We're really excited about that convention, and what a great audience to check out your book, teachers from around the United States and throughout the world. You can learn all about these opportunities and more by going to our website, readingwithyourkids.com, clicking on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page, and scrolling on down to the various services. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, we want to start by thanking our guest, Tamara Girardi. Please be sure to check out Why, Daddy? Why? Also want to thank our sponsors, daretodream.com. Please let them know, daretodreambook.com. daretodreambook.com. Please let them know that you heard about them on the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Also want to thank my team, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Nicole Bell Castro, Ashley Contreras, Mirabella Q, Rain Pan. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.